were just leading up to Rob's house. So here it is. This is Rural Farm. As you can see, it's absolutely beautiful and tranquil. Who would have ever known how sinister it was behind closed doors?
I'm Rob Holden, candidate for Calder Valley.
Everybody knew him. He came across as a safe guy in a world of sharks.
He had a room available and wanted to help.
Everybody just loved him. He was a knight in shining armour for a lot of people, but then things started to change.
He was presenting that Heidi was his partner.
I sensed that there were eyes watching me. I prized it open and it said camera and microphone.
All that time, he was looking at me in the shower, in the bath.
We thought Heidi was making this story up.
You're telling everybody that I'm a liar. There is a very high possibility that there's a lot of victims in this case.
The police informed me that there was over 100 women.
It's got a bit dark.
Back in 2019, I was in a relationship that wasn't working for either of us. And I just said, I'm leaving. I didn't want to leave, I was absolutely devastated, but that's how I ended up going and living with Rob Holden at Rural Farm. I had seen that Rob was advertising for a lodger. And he immediately rang me and said, of course, you're more than welcome into my home. Literally, the following week, I was living there. I knew Rob Holden as a family friend. He wasn't blood related to me, but I saw him like an uncle. He was so kind, he just went above and beyond for everyone. He knew I was in debt and I was struggling at the time. So he said, do not worry about paying me. You just get on your feet. And I was really grateful for it. I went in and he'd whitewashed the bedrooms for us, bless him. He just was so accommodating and I really felt comfortable because I'd been to his house for barbecues and parties and things like that. So I was familiar with the house. It was almost so I'm just visiting Uncle Rob again.
I got to know Robert purely through the world of local politics. He was on the parish council and the borough council for the Conservative Party.
I'm Rob Holden. I'm here to answer questions that I've been given over the last few days. You would not believe the amount of questions that have been thrown at me.
I turned up during April 2015 of the general election campaign. And as I walked across, I was intercepted by this cheerful, bubbly chap called Rob, who couldn't have been a nicer fellow.
It's about the people of the Calder Valley electing a representative to speak on their behalf at Westminster.
And he collared me for a 5-minute chat, and by the end, he'd recruited me to try and join the parish council. He came across as a safe guy in a world of sharks.
My friendship with Rob started because we were both politicians, and he was a very good friend. Rob had a kind heart. He did so much for the community, and he would get involved with anything he could, really, to make things better for people.
Rob created something called the Calder Valley Flood Defence Group. Hebden Bridge, it was known as the flooding town.
Most people know that I've been heavily involved in flood alleviation since 2012.
He was such a big name with the floods, he became very well reputed. Everyone involved in local politics, the MP, volunteers, community activists, you name it, his name would come up. He was the flood man.
We thought, oh, good on him, good lad. That's Rob we all like, all love, we all trust. He's a community person.
And he would raise money to provide new furniture, new fridges, washers. And he also took people into his home that had lost their homes.
Boxing Day 2015, everyone knows what happened. We had the worst flooding in living history.
I woke up Boxing Day to hear a flood warning. And my friend phoned me and said, I think you should move your car. So that's what I did. And by the time I'd walked back, which was only like 5 minutes, it was flooded. It was starting to flood really high, shoulder height near enough. The fence had come down with the force of the water. I've never experienced anything like that. I went to my mum's and then I returned back 2 days after. When you think of people being flooded, you just think water and things are wet. That is not the case whatsoever. The whole bungalow was black, full of silt. It was heartbreaking. You're left with absolutely nothing, nothing at all. So my boss told me about Rob. He had a room available and he wanted to help. It seemed a good option because he was a well-known person. It weren't like he was a complete stranger. And he was really, really kind. He actually didn't want any rent off me to try and help me get back on my feet. But I said, no, I do want to pay you some rent, which I did do. So, yeah, I felt relieved, really.
Rob was a knight in shining armour for a lot of people, and he was just so supportive. We just really got along. He had a really nice and calm temperament. I'm very much the same, and so it just was easy. I just let out my heart and soul to him, really, and I really felt like he was that shoulder to cry on, but also somebody that I could trust and, you know, depend upon. I enjoyed living there.
When I moved in, Rob was hardly ever there, so I kind of felt like I'd landed on my feet a bit because I'd gone through all that trauma of the floods and he just left me to it. Never really saw him. But then awkward things started happening. So if I was making tea, for me, being polite, obviously I'd include Rob in that. He'd just say things as if I'd done it like we was a couple instead of just being a kind thing to do. He definitely tried to make it that he was a family, expecting to do stuff together. Everything was as a couple. Obviously, people didn't really know me. He'd be like, oh, this is Melanie. And then he'd say, oh, yeah, we've done such a thing together. It could have been something simple, but he'd turn it into like we was a couple. He definitely wanted his friends, acquaintances to think that I was with him. Never anything inappropriate, so it's hard to put your finger on it. Really hard to put your finger on it. No, like, you know, catching him look at me in a certain way. There was nothing of any kind that he did like that at all.
Our relationship was nice, it was friendly, but then things started to change. He would post me on his social media, so I could see that he wanted people to know that I lived with him. And he would always recommend that we go to local pubs. And he would walk in with this energy as though I was his partner.
So I knew Rob Holden from being on the parish council with him. And I remember the first time I met Heidi, because it was at a dinner at someone's house. And we walked in and he was just there looking like the cat that had got the cream with this very smug look on his face.
We went to a farm shop for our breakfast and then he would be very, very loud in shouting across the room to say, "What would you like for tea? What shall I make us for tea?" But the energy behind it was that we were a couple.
It became very obvious to me that on his social media, both his posts and the pictures that he posted, he was presenting a narrative that Heidi was his partner. I said to my husband, "Do you think Heidi is aware that this is what he's doing and this is how it comes across to people who don't know? Do you think she knows that he is depicting her as though she is his wife?"
Over time, his reactions to things were progressively more intense. So, for example, being angry that people saw us as a father-daughter and not a couple. But Rob was furious, and he was really venomous about it. At times when I would get myself upset, I'd then pull myself back and tell myself, but he does a lot for you, he's so kind, he's harmless. But something was really wrong. Something was not okay. I sensed that there were eyes watching me. Real farm. It was a beautiful, beautiful big farmhouse with the most stunning views. The house itself was really nice and big.
You'd go in, big dining area, beautiful country kitchen, big fire and big bedrooms to one side. And then a bit further up was a bathroom, biggest bath I've ever seen.
But it was like a jumble sailing there. Rob was a hoarder, so there was a lot of things everywhere, computers everywhere. There wasn't very much space whatsoever. He had an 8-man table stacked with computers. For dinner, you would just have a space for your plate. That was it. He was always helping friends and family with their phones and computers, and he wouldn't just fix it, he'd always offer them a new hard drive. He had hundreds of hard drives stored in his house. Eventually, it was tiresome for me. I like to be in a clean, spacious environment, and a lot of it was just rubbish, so I basically just said, "You need to organise this." And we literally got rid of so much of it, and he was so grateful. And, he was saying to his friends and his family, "It's the best thing that ever happened, Heidi moving in."
I first met Rob when Heidi moved into his property. Heidi is one of my best friends, so I used to go to the house quite often, and Rob Holden was always there to greet me, shake my hand, offer me a drink. He was really nice and welcoming. Heidi, at the time, had just gone through a difficult patch in her life. I stayed with Heidi on Christmas Eve because I wanted to support my friend, and Rob was there, and he was saying that he was going to go and help to feed the elderly. To give up his time and to go and help on Christmas Day, I just thought, what a nice guy. But he wasn't afraid to sort of boast about that. Rob would say about all the work he'd done in the community and say that he'd won public awards.
He was a master at taking all the credit for something whilst actually not doing an awful amount. But because he was so good with people, he could manipulate them in a way that they would do the work, he would get the credit, but they would still love him.
It's like, I've done this and Rob will always done something better. And then because this was happening a little bit more often, you start to listen to what he's saying And then when you start listening to a person more thoroughly, and then they start tripping themselves up then, and you think to yourself, that's not right, that. You haven't done that. I know for a fact you've not done that. I did see that side of Rob where he did attach himself too much to the women who he would associate with, that they wouldn't be interested in him. But whether he thought they would be, I think that's where he was coming from. He was a bit of a fantasist, a bit of a Walter Mitty. But he was a very charming guy. And for him to be that type of nice person, women probably felt safe being around him.
Rob told me about his hot tub parties, you know, legendary parties that he'd had.
He told me all the time, you have to come to my hot tub parties. They're amazing. But I didn't feel comfortable with that.
There was one particular party at his house, standing room only, packed. What I really noticed was the absurd preponderance of extremely glamorous young women, most of whom were not with a date or a partner. He was literally like a wannabe pound shop Hugh Hefner, if you like.
He would come out with these stories. He mentioned something about a porn star once, or, you know, people in his bathroom.
He's got this big double jacuzzi type bath, huge it was. Again, I say, oh, it's a big bath, is that? And he went, oh yeah, I've had a blonde and a brunette in that bath at the same time. And that was another one. I thought, yeah, okay, whatever, you know.
Half of me thought, is it just made up? Was the porn star paid? I just kind of thought half of it wasn't true because he wasn't Brad Pitt or anything.
I've been living with Rob 6 months and I just really started to feel suffocated by him. But I was living in his house, I was living there rent-free, and I didn't have the courage to say, you're making me feel uncomfortable. One day I was looking on Rightmove for potential houses. I wasn't in a position to buy, but I was just getting excited really for what, you know, I could potentially get. And he walked in and he saw that I was looking at houses and he was really annoyed at me. And he said, what are you doing that for? You're not in a position to buy. And I said, I know, but there's no harm seeing what's out there. I wanted to save a house deposit. And he was like, you're doing so well in business, why don't you just buy the house outright? You can stay here for years. It won't take you that long. And I just felt like, you definitely feel like I'm not leaving. But I felt so guilty because he always told me how much I've changed his life. You've saved me. But there was just this lingering undertone of something isn't quite right.
I must admit, I was worried about Heidi. I felt, oh, something's really not right here. Something's turned. It's got a bit dark. I did think that she was maybe vulnerable, but then what could I do? I couldn't appear like a madwoman out of nowhere and say, are you quite sure you should be living with this guy? Because if she'd have said to me, well, what's wrong with him? What could I have said? I didn't have that kind of relationship or friendship with her. I didn't have a friendship with her. So how could I go and say something like that to her?
One day, he started to tell me about his previous lodgers, about how some of them are very free-spirited. He would say, oh, one of them, when it would snow, she'd go outside and do naked snow angels. It's just like a big family here. You know, all my lodgers would walk around practically naked. This one particular day, I shouted up and asked him if he was in the bath. And I said, Rob, I need to brush my teeth, I need my toothbrush. And he said, well, just come in and grab it, I'll cover myself. And I said, just let me know when you're covered. And he said, yeah, I'm covered. And I walked in, assuming that he would have used the dressing gown as a full-on shield so I wouldn't see anything. But instead, he was just fully exposed in the bath, just cupping himself. And that really bothered me. I just thought that was really inappropriate. And then one night he got really, really drunk. He'd been on a counsellor meeting on Zoom and it was going on for hours. and he had a few bottles of wine in between. And at the end of his Zoom meeting, he was quite drunk. He opened another bottle of wine and put some music on. And then he started making really inappropriate comments to me. So, for example, when I would choose a song, he would say, "Oh my God, this is my favourite song. Take me to bed right now." And then the next song would come on and he'd say, "Oh my God, make my babies." And then a song came on that reminded him of his friend, and he said, "We call her Jackie Big Tits." And he said, "You've got great boobs, Heidi." And I was like, what? And it really took me aback, and I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you've been living with me for 6 months, Heidi. I've seen them." That made me feel really, really uncomfortable. He then got up and cuddled me, and I really felt him press himself into my chest. And it just made me so angry, because I thought, I know exactly what you are doing. And then I said, right. I pushed him away and said, "It's time for bed." From then on, I stopped going downstairs and talking to him. He just really crossed the line.
After I moved out from Rob's, the contact was very little. I never left on bad terms, but there wasn't much contact at all for a good couple of years. So I'd wanted to return to work after having my son, and I posted on Facebook that I was looking for part-time work.
Holden set up a computer shop in the village. It was a work-from-home business, but he wanted to be in the thick of things. So he opened up a little computer shop, which has since changed to a vintage shop.
Rob got in touch and said there was a job there for me, which I thought was great. We just needed somebody in the shop while he was out and about collecting computers. So yeah, helping me out again after all these years of not being in touch. And he was there at my rescue again. The shop was very small. He was never ever there. I'd open up and I'd close. He'd pop in. Sometimes I wouldn't see him all week.
He would take a lot of locals' computers in. Anyone with a broken computer, a faulty computer, they would go to him, because everybody knew him. This guy would have a backlog of laptops, and I would hear things about him not fixing things on time. So it seemed off to me, but not off enough for me to be suspicious that something weird was going on. Not at the time.
Myself and Heidi did have conversations about Rob and his behaviour changing in terms of possessiveness and jealousy. She told me she had downloaded a dating app and Rob wasn't happy about that, and I thought, why would somebody not be happy about their lodger downloading a dating app? She definitely felt trapped and she didn't really know how to tell him.
I'd had almost a year out of dating because I really wanted to focus on myself, but I finally opened myself up and I went on a date with somebody and Rob was very angry. It was as though I'd just told my partner that I was cheating on them. The following weekend, I met that guy again, but I chose not to tell Rob. And when I arrived, Rob sent me a text message saying, "You must have a doppelganger. I swear I've just seen you in Leeds." And that is where I was. I'd gone to the guy's apartment, so the only way that he could have possibly have seen me was walking from a car park that wasn't on the public streets. So I knew that you haven't seen me, I just don't know how you know. I couldn't even think straight. The guy that I was with said, "Why don't you look at Find Your iPhone?" And I did, and it said, "Heidi's MacBook has tracked you at 16:13 p.m. from Royal Farm." I had purchased my MacBook from Rob, and he had set it up for me. He'd set up the password. He'd even linked my mobile phone and everything to it. So I instantly started to panic. I knew he had tracked me.
When I worked worked at the shop. Rob had given me a work phone, which I thought was super generous because it was a brand new phone. And there were times when I was bored out my tree and I'd think, I've not had a customer for 5 hours, I'm going to go. And as soon as I'd left the building, Rob would ring and say, a customer's just come to the door, are you not there? And I used to remember thinking, how has that happened? So I'd drive back, but then there'd be nobody there. And I generally just thought it was coincidence, or maybe just wanted to believe it was coincidence.
I decided I would confront Rob. I knew that this was something that I couldn't just let slide. I couldn't just sweep this under the rug like I had everything else. And I said, it's interesting that you said that you saw me in Leeds, Rob, because I was in Leeds. And he said, oh, I knew I'd seen you. And I said, no, but this is the thing, I don't believe that you did. I know that you tracked me. And he said, I was in Leeds, I didn't get home until 5:30. Explain to me then how my MacBook tracked me then. Who did that? Was it the ghost of Roe Farm? And he said, I was in Leeds. And he stormed out of the kitchen. I told my auntie that I believed that he was tracking me, and she is a police officer. And she said, what did he say when you confronted him? And I said, he denied it, he got really angry at me. She said, something is really, really wrong, Heidi. I see this in my job all the time. He's acting like a possessive boyfriend. I want you to check the house for cameras. It was a Tuesday night. Rob was hosting a parish councillor meeting on Zoom, so I knew that he would be busy for maybe 2 hours whilst I looked for cameras. So I went into my bedroom and I was looking in the light fittings. I was opening the wardrobe and feeling in the door to see if there was any tiny little camera hidden anywhere, and there wasn't one. And then I suddenly remembered that there was an alarm sensor in the bathroom, which I always found strange. So I decided that I would check it to see if it was a camera. I went downstairs, walked across the dining room, got a knife, and I shoved it up my jumper, pretended to get a glass of water so that Rob wouldn't be alerted. I went back up to the bathroom and I looked up at it and thought, how am I going to get into that? So I was frantically looking around for what I could use. And I opened the bathroom cupboard and there were 2 paint tins. So I got the step and I put the paint tins on the step. And just as I stood to get the knife into the bracket to prise it open, the knife fell out of my hand and clanged on the floor. I was so nervous because I thought, Rob is literally beneath me, will have heard that, and he'll be thinking, what's she doing? You know, so I was just panicking and overthinking.
It was an awful time for me to know that my friend was going through something and I couldn't be there. I was scared for Heidi's life at that point because I really genuinely thought if it is a camera and it has been filming, he's going to want that to go away very quickly, especially because of his reputation in the community.
I composed myself, I stood on the paint tins again and I used the knife and I prised it open and I saw that it said camera and microphone. I just sat with it for a moment. Like, what happens now? Is Rob filming me? Has he been filming me this entire time? I really didn't know what to do with that. I took a photograph of it and then I googled the serial number and it said hidden camera designed without a red light so it doesn't alert the person that they are being filmed. And I instantly just felt, sorry, I'm getting upset. I instantly just felt physically sick because I knew then it's definitely a camera. I just thought, I can't accuse Rob of filming me. But then this other part of me was like, but there's a camera and you felt sick this whole time. But that voice, I shut down. And I just went into full protection mode and didn't believe he would do that to me. I realised I needed to tell my auntie that it was a camera, so I forwarded her the pictures of it. She instantly said, Heidi, you need to ring the police now. And I refused. I couldn't. So the police were called on my behalf. It got to 12:30 and I saw lights pulling up to the house and I instantly knew that was the police. Sorry. So, I just waited. What could I do? I just waited in my room. I saw the police car drive off, so they obviously took Rob. And I was hysterical. And I was shouting, Rob, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Because I was so upset that I'd put him through that. I can't even tell you the guilt and the shame that I was feeling that I'd put him through that. And I just thought, God, he must be so confused and so upset. And all that, and I could just think about this little teddy bear of a human that mows old ladies' lawns. You know, like, he's the nicest person in the world and I've just had him arrested. It was just awful. I woke up at my auntie's house and the phone rang and the lady said, Hi, Heidi, I am the detective on your case. I need you to go back to Roe Farm, gather all of your things because you will never be going back. There were a load of police there and, you know, I went into the bathroom and the sensor wasn't there and it was just dawning on me like, this is actually real.
I heard some murmurings about police cars being outside his shop. Seemed odd. Then I heard from a mutual friend that there were police cars outside of his house. Then I heard from a mutual contact that he'd been arrested. On Facebook, bang, the local village groups, explosion. Where's Rob? What's happened to Rob?
Then my inbox was flooded and a load of speculation started because he was very vocal that I lived with him. He was very, very prominent on social media as well, and for 3 days he's not posted.
He's not answering his phone, he's not answering his messages, he's not emailing anybody. It just disappeared. That's not him. So there's something not right.
After I found the camera, I googled the serial number and it said it went out of production in 2017. almost 3 years before I moved in there, and I realised that it wasn't put there for me. The police said, all we actually have as evidence at this moment in time is you. And we believe that he had an infatuation with you. But I knew that he had a lot of female lodgers. So if this camera went out of production in 2017, how long has it been at his house? He'd been there for 20 years. So I was thinking, there is a very high possibility that there's a lot of victims in this case.
I first met Rob in 2004. It was before he was a counsellor. I've lived with him 3 times when my relationships have fallen apart. He was my rock. He was my go-to. He took me under his wing, knowing I was on my own with the children. He was just kind and supportive. He would always be the one to go to, and he was like a brother figure, and that's how I saw him. First thing I heard was the fact that he'd been arrested, and I didn't believe it because he was a good person. And then he got released, so I went over and I said, what's all this? He said, it's all rubbish, none of it's true. So I said, are you absolutely 110% sure? He said, yeah, I would never do anything like that. I didn't doubt anything that he said. I didn't want to doubt anything he said.
In the aftermath of him being released on bail, I was convinced that I was seeing him everywhere. I was constantly scanning for him. It consumed my day-to-day life.
I remember being in the car with Heidi and we drove over the tops and she did think that she saw him, and the panic on her face was, I'd never seen that. I'd never seen that.
I felt like he is going to want to make me pay for ruining his life. I would have dreams that he would come to the house and kidnap me. I'd hear anything outside and jump up to my window to check that it wasn't him. I had to have cameras and an alarm fitted in my house. But the anxiety never left me, it was there all the time. It consumed me every day, but the anger overrid it. I was convinced that there was other victims, so I started looking for them. I just went onto Rob's Facebook. Any woman that I knew that had ever been at the house, he'd ever spoken about, any community group that ever had his name on. For example, they called a Valley Flood Support Group. I just typed in his name and hundreds of posts came out with women in particular, thanking him for his services with their laptops or their phones. And I just created my own little database and I went from there really, and I just started reaching out to people. I was just determined to get as much evidence on him as I could because I was being told it was just about me and I knew it wasn't. Obviously I didn't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I knew there were more people than just me.
I'd only met Heidi once and Rob introduced me to her, and I know her family, so we was mutual friends on Facebook. And then after Rob had got arrested, I messaged on Facebook Messenger, and then the conversation escalated quite quickly to, obviously I've rang her and she described everything what had happened and that I am probably one of the victims. But I kind of still generally thought, no, Rob's the nice guy, he won't have done that to me. He had that infatuation with Heidi, so he won't have filmed me because he didn't have an infatuation with me, because he'd never had a glass of wine and made a pass at me. There was none of that. So in my head, I felt confident that actually, no, because he was my friend and it must have just been Heidi.
I was contacted by Heidi to say that they'd found secret cameras. I didn't believe it. went into total denial. I said, you know, maybe you're imagining it. She said, I'm not imagining it. And I let it go over my head and put it to the back of my mind because I needed him and I didn't want to believe that he was capable of that. But then looking back, there are a few strange things that did happen. Sometimes we'd just sit down and watch a movie. He'd open a bottle of wine, we'd probably drink that. And then he'd open another bottle of wine. And then I'd go to bed. And then in the morning I'd come down and he'd say, oh, do you remember sleeping with me last night? So he was making me think that I'd actually been intimate with him when I hadn't. There are times when we've gone to London and we've got a twin room, so I'd go in the bathroom, get ready. On one occasion, he came in the shower and took a picture of me. And he was laughing and joking and he was just trying to mess around and just come in and go, I've just took a picture. I've spotted you now in the shower. So I'd come out and say, you shouldn't have done that. It's bang out of order. And he'd laugh it off in a way that it would stop any confrontation, any argument. It would just get thrown to one side. So then, years down the line, he'd send me a random message saying, do you remember this picture? So I'd reply and say, yeah, the one that you took sneakily. And he'd just laugh it off. Yeah, but you know you love it. And then after that, I've met somebody whilst I was out with Rob. Rob went absolutely wild. He hated it. He absolutely hated it. I said, you're embarrassing. I said, you've no right to be like that and try and rule what and who I see and when. And he pushed me over. And I fell flat on my ankle, broke my heel bone and my metatarsals, and I was in plaster for about 7 or 8 months. So I stopped that friendship. Quite a lonely time for me because I'd lost my safety network. And then about 6 months after, I was upset about something and I felt a bit vulnerable and I needed him. I thought, oh, I'm not bothered about my foot, I don't care. I need my friend. So that was completely forgotten. The thought of losing that safety network was terrifying. I think listening to my gut feeling, that would have jeopardised that. So again, that was a situation where I was in denial and he clung on to that and clung on to my vulnerability. It was all about the manipulation.
There were the rumours of him doing what he'd done, and I didn't believe it because we thought Rob had a thing for Heidi. And we thought something had blown up between them and that Heidi was making this story up to get Rob into a lot of trouble. And that's what a lot of people were thinking, really, to start with.
We knew why he'd been arrested, but we could not say, we could not talk about it, we could not make any kind of comment at all, for fear of maybe jeopardising a trial. But he could. Rob Holden could say whatever he wanted, and he did. He went on social media and said he had been suffering from mental health difficulties and that he had got so bad and so down that he had decided that he wanted to end his life, that he had taken an overdose and that he was in hospital seeking treatment.
He was inundated with support, hundreds of messages giving him love, and that was really hurtful to me because I wasn't allowed to say a thing. I wasn't allowed to post on social media. I wasn't allowed to defend myself in any way. And that was when he started lying about my character to other people. He called my mum and said, you present yourself as a very nice girl on social media, but that living together, he saw the mask slip and that he saw the real me. And I had lied that he was tracking me, he was filming me. He also said that I was soliciting and a webcam girl on his premises, so he was really trying to tar my character. That infuriated me. You're telling everybody that I'm a liar. You're telling people that I've made this up and that I'm trying to ruin your life. Like, it was the audacity of it all. And then I was being told he's still attending the council meetings, very cocksure of himself.
Step straight back into his chair role, and he would just turn up, open the meeting and chair the meeting and speak to everybody as if nothing had happened. Laughing and joking, it was amazing. Brazen almost. The police have told us we're not allowed to talk about him and his arrest, and he's back chairing meetings. He wanted to have his cake and eat it.
It was like, how dare you?
People started to believe Heide after the police had kept his equipment for so long. So they were then sort of like scrutinising his computers and things like that. Because of the time that they'd had them for, a lot of people were saying, well, if there was nothing on his systems, he'd have had them back within a week or two. But because it was going on for months and months, we thought there's obviously something wrong here for them to keep these computers, these hard drives, whatever it were on, as evidence. So I think that's the time really when the penny dropped with a lot of people.
Any semblance of remaining support and admiration for him, which had started to ebb already by that point, it vanished, it crumbled. If there were one or two people who wanted to hold the jury out, oh, innocent until proven guilty, I'm not really sure yet, that didn't last long.
It made me feel sick because I was such a good friend of Rob's, and I thought I was a very good judge of character, but I never picked up on anything at all.
While there were never any big red flags with Rob Holden, what there were lots of little red LEDs all over the place, and they'd flash on and off just once. And those things would be something and nothing, but when you stood back over a long period of time, it was quite an alarming picture.
Rob liked to boast about all the women in his life, to everybody actually. He really enjoyed telling people that he had all these female friends and female lodgers and all this sort of thing. So I had quite a good idea of the people who had previously lived there. So I was able to go through his friends list and find them. I was a woman on a mission, and then I basically had a phone call from the detective on the case who said, please, can you stop upsetting people? Because right now, all we have is the 3 weeks worth of footage that the camera films at one time of you. If in the future there is other victims in this case, then we will contact them. I think at the time I was so filled with rage and resentment and frustration to be in silence, because I felt like these people had a right to know that there was a potential that it had happened to them. And it was that was fueling me to be like, I'm taking you down, I don't care what anybody tells me. I had so many sleepless nights worrying and tossing and turning. I just wanted the case to progress. I was determined to get him sentenced. Anybody could be a victim in this. Anyone who's ever been in the house or ever potentially given a MacBook or laptop phone. I was just racking my brains for all the times he told me a story about somebody at a hot tub party or somebody at a charity ball. Anyone who had tagged themselves on Facebook at his shop or anything like that, you know, I was just relentless.
And I was getting live updates from Heidi as she was uncovering more and more people. So my phone was constantly buzzing. She managed to find previous lodgers who had then said who else had lived there, and it snowballed and they all got in touch with the police.
I contacted so many women and I either had people ignore me or people say, really sorry to hear that, I hope you're okay, and just disregard me. They didn't ask me questions, they didn't say, oh my God, what are you talking about, can we have a call? And I thought, that's strange, but then I'd analyse it and think, but they also love and trust Rob just the same as I did. But it became a turning point where I was receiving inboxes like, hi Heidi, please may we have a phone call? I'd had quite a few people say, I have had the police tell me that I need to come to the station and identify myself. The police had been able to identify them because he had files on his computer of all of us and he put our first and second names. But he wasn't just filming. So if you had taken your laptop or your mobile phone to be fixed and you had any indecent image on there, he would take it and put it into a file.
Two lady officers came to the house and explained everything that had happened, like Heidi had told me, and could have confirmed these pictures were me, but you couldn't deny they were me. And yeah, so I did become a victim of Rob because he had done it to me. There were pictures of me like getting dressed, walking around in a towel, and then getting changed in the bathroom and me in the bath. You feel a bit sick. I only came to you because you offered help. And now you've made me a victim when I'd already lost everything that I owned. And you've totally took advantage of that. I'm angry, I'm really angry.
Well, my doubts only came when the police was knocking on my door. They came over and they showed me some images and they said, is this you? And I said, yes. And then I thought, has he really done it? He must have done, these images are in front of me. They informed me that he'd hacked into my iCloud account and downloaded all my images. The images went back years and years. I can't even begin to tell you how I felt. It was just total wow.
The more and more that I was putting the victim stories together, I realised that the common denominator between us all were that we were all vulnerable. The community loved him for all of the effort that he put in to help people. And he had multiple women welcomed into his home, gave them somewhere to live for free. They're at their most vulnerable, and he took advantage of it.
Single mums, vulnerable, just come out of a relationship or lost their home, and he's their knight in shining armour. And that seems to be the recurring pattern with him.
Rob knew that I'd had previous history with being secretly filmed. I'd been put on the internet with these videos all across the world, which was the worst and hardest time of my life. Rob supported me through that. He'd say it was absolutely disgusting. The worst human being would do that to somebody. He even went to the extent of saying, well, I'm going to save all these images on my server while it's investigated with the police. All that time, he was also looking at me in the shower, in the bath. It's just devastating. It's like a double whammy. I mean, it doesn't happen to a lot of people once in a lifetime, but for it to happen twice is soul destroying. And to keep going from the initial one that happened to me to carry on through life trying to trust again was really hard to do in itself. But now knowing that he'd also done it, the person who was my rock, it's shattered it all, and nothing will ever take that away ever again. The damage is done, the glass has been broken, and you can't fix it. In In my mind, I keep thinking, has he sold my images? Am I on a dark web? Where am I? Who's watching me now? Who's looking at them? There's no words. There's no words for it at all. Sorry.
Finally, after waiting for months, the police told me that he was faced with all of the charges. He would go to court, and in my mind I was so happy because it was progression. You know, I'd been waiting for a long time for it to come together.
Heidi wanted to go to court, but then she said she couldn't face it. And I thought, you know, if I go, I can feed back to Heidi whatever had been discussed. So I went into the room and I sat and waited for Rob Holden to walk through the doors. And he didn't. One of the officials stood up and announced to the court that Rob Holden was on holiday.
He decided to go on holiday to Cyprus. He'd posted on Instagram that he was having a great time. It was just like, wow, you just don't care.
I felt rage that his passport hadn't even been taken off of him. He came back from Cyprus and I said, I bet he will flee. And then he did.
We got the call from the police to say that he disappeared to Cape Verde. In his mind, he was not guilty. He'd not done anything wrong. It was all a pack of lies. So as far as he was concerned, he was going to do everything in his power to stay where he was.
Even though there's an extradition treaty, it's very complicated and bureaucratic. He did his homework.
I knew that Rob would do as much as he could to get out of being sent to prison. That was Rob. He knew how to get away with things.
I genuinely just thought, of course he did. What a little rat. Of course, you have not taken responsibility for this in any way, shape or form, so of course you are doing whatever you can to escape it. It was as though he had a get out of jail free card constantly. Like he knew how to manipulate the system, and it was riling me. I was determined that he would be back. Like, I never let go of the thought of him coming back. I thought, we're gonna get you. The detective called me and she said, we've arrested Rob in Cape Verde and he has attended court and they have voted in our favour to bring him back. And she said, unfortunately, he's appealed their decision. And I was like, sorry?
I thought that was it. I didn't think we were ever going to see him again because obviously he's a very clever guy.
You're allowed to appeal the court's decision 3 times. So this just kept pushing it back and back and back. And by this point, I really, really desperately just wanted to get on with my life.
Between talking to the police, CID, and them going over and dealing with the authorities over there, they finally got him back. It took nearly 2 years.
I'll never forget it. The detective rang and said, I've got great news. And I said, what? Tell me. And she said, he was brought back this morning, but he will be remanded. So we've got him. He's in the cells. He will not be able to go anywhere else. And I was just so overwhelmed with emotion. I was crying my eyes out because I just felt so relieved. Like we're finally bringing this to an end now. In the December 2023, he attended court and he pleaded guilty. So there would be no trial.
In an ideal world, him going to trial would have been the best thing. It was his way of another cop-out, the easy way out.
Rob dialed in on the video link. The court read out a list of all of the victims and all of the charges of voyeurism. He had to say whether or not he pleaded guilty or not guilty to each one of those charges when he said guilty. And it was the first time that I'd been able to actually see how he responded to that information. His attitude was almost like he was chairing one of the council meetings. And I just remember sitting there and thinking, do you not have any remorse for what you've done?
He'd only accepted 30 charges and they'd accepted that too. The police informed me that there was over 100 women had been involved in this, so that doesn't even cover it. So that was very disappointing. He has impacted so many lives because of this, and I still think to this day he doesn't acknowledge or understand what he's done wrong.
Because the trial wasn't going ahead, a sentencing date was given, which was the 19th of July 2024. And Heidi was looking forward to that chapter of her life being closed and being able to move forward.
So we were told that the sentencing was going ahead this month and we could finally put an end to all of this, and then I received a phone call to say that it's being extended again. His defence weren't able to make that date, so they've had to negotiate with the judge and set a new one, and unfortunately it's in 3 months' time. And I just had so many people saying to me, you know, I'm so angry or I'm so hurt, I can't believe it. Everybody is hurting about this.
It was a very emotional time. We'd all kind of geared ourselves for this day that we've all been waiting for, because we were all thinking about everything that had happened, going back in time, replaying it in our minds. And the fact that we've had to wait this long is just prolonged it all. The hurt, the pain, you know, that in itself is really difficult. I think that maybe the healing process probably won't ever complete, but it might start to do something when he's been sentenced.
So it's the 27th of September and I'm just on my way to Crown Court for the sentencing. Unfortunately, Heidi can't be with me today. It's been going on for that long that she actually had a baby a few days ago, and I'm going to update her as the day goes on.
It's actually coming to an end now. I will have my story heard. You have stolen my voice for too long now. Far too long. This should not be going on for years of my life. I want to bury it. We need justice. You have left emotional scars that will stay with me and all of your victims for the rest of their lives.
Hello.
Hello. I'm sorry I missed your first call, but I was a little bit preoccupied.
Oh, that's okay. How are you doing?
I'm nervous.
Yeah.
How did it go?
So, he got 6 years and 2 months.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
I'm so shocked!
Yeah.
I totally thought I was only going to get like 2.
No, he got 6 years and 2 months.
I'm absolutely thrilled about that. That's
Yeah.
absolutely incredible.
He has to go on the sexual harm register for life. So he's not allowed to contact any of the victims ever, and he is also on the sex offenders register for life as well.
I'm elated.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it's good. I think it is good.
I feel really emotional. I'm like, I can't believe it's done now.
Yeah.
You know, like, I've got this amazing girl and it's all done now. Like, what an amazing week.
Yeah. The book is closed.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
I really can totally end this chapter now. It's amazing.
Yeah. The impact that Rob has actually had on these women was just so shocking. Some had turned to alcohol, some had lost their jobs, some had actually lost their children. And I don't think he's remorseful at all, and these people now have to live with what he's done.
I genuinely just think, thank God for Heidi, because how long would that carry on for? It goes back 20 odd years, so it would have definitely carried on for another 20 years. Who actually is Rob? Everything was fake. The friendship were fake. I wish I'd never met him.
I just want to make sure that women follow the gut feeling and don't ignore it, even if you care for that person.
Trust yourself, trust your intuition. Who else is sat questioning themselves the way that we all did? And how many people are out there in the world that are in vulnerable positions, just like we all were, that are right now disregarding their gut instincts? Because, well, he's such a nice guy. Well, that's the whole point. There will be more people out there doing the same, and he won't be the last.